Hello everyone and welcome back to Racing Weekly, our second series of this podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. It's also with a big smile that I'm going to say welcome back to my good pal Sam Turner. Sam, I've hardly seen you since you absolutely blitzed it at Cheltenham. So, how have you been?
Well, you keep ignoring my WhatsApp messages and my FaceTime requests, Rish. So, that's the basic reason for that. No, great to be back with you. Great that we've been commissioned for a second series. Who knew? Hey, what about that? Fantastic scenes.
Yeah, so now that we're getting paid, I'm going to read your WhatsApp messages. But it's been a great start to the flat season, and I will talk a little bit more about it, I'm sure, a little bit later on. But just in general, how excited have you been by what's been going on?
I think this has been some brilliant racing. I mean, the resurgence of Godolphin and Charlie Appleby has been astonishing, really. I mean, obviously, Aidan O'Brien seemed to win every trial that was going. But Charlie's delivered in spades and the Guineas. I mean, to win the English, the Irish and the French is an astonishing achievement, really. And he just looks as though he's got a wealth of three-year-old talent this year. But I wouldn't write Ballydoyle off just yet. I could see them bouncing back over the Derby weekend for sure.
I'll tell you something, Sam, you know as well as I do, but this is such a great time of the year for sports fans. Obviously, we just had the end of the season football-wise, but very soon we've got cricket, we've got some of the major summer sporting events about to start, and racing is right there with the Derby, Royal Ascot, obviously later on in the summer, there's the likes of the July Festival, Glorious Goodwood, etc., or the Qatar Goodwood Festival, the Ebor meeting. It's the cusp of learning who's going to be the big players over the next 3 to 4 months.
Absolutely, and your new wife must be rubbing her hands thinking of all that money that's going to roll in with you covering most of these big tournaments and huge events. You forgot to mention the Commonwealth Games. I think you're probably even competing in that, Rish. So you've got a busy summer planned. I hope you're fit, old boy.
Trinidad and Tobago Bowls team. There's a chance of that.
Absolutely, you got a great chance, haven't you? Got a great chance. So there's some phenomenal weeks coming up, isn't there? Obviously with the Derby and Royal Ascot, and they're rolling on, and that's the beauty of the summer, really, isn't it? It's just that intertwined nature of all the different sports. Thankfully we can kiss goodbye to the football season for a bit. I know there's the women's Euros that we've got that to look forward to keep you going, but thankfully there's no major tournament for the men's football team, so we won't have that disappointment this summer, and we can just go through with some promising cricket. We look forward to that, and some brilliant racing as well, which is just absolutely phenomenal. 2 weeks of Wimbledon as well. What more could a man want?
As a United fan, I'm very glad the football season is over. But if you are joining us on Racing Weekly for the very first time, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the show. Each week during the flat season, Sam and I are going to meet up and talk about all things racing. We'll interview some very, very good guests. We'll preview the big race meetings, the biggest races, and hopefully we'll point you in the right direction along the way. Hopefully we're going in the same direction as you when we point you in that direction. A very short show this week because we're just getting back into the swing of things. And so we're going to start with Racing Recap.
From last is running a big race. On the outside is Imperial Fighter. Inside the final 200 yards. It's Native Trail going to the front from Wexford Native. Native Trail, New Energies running on in the second. Native Trail is back on the winning trail in the Dalzell's Irish 2000 Guineas.
And the obvious place to begin in Racing Recap is with a classic that took place on Saturday in Ireland, and Native Trail winning the Irish 2000 Guineas, Charlie Appleby becoming the first trainer to win the English, Irish, French 2000 Guineas with 3 different horses. What do we think that says about the quality of Charlie Appleby's 3-year-old milers, and who's the best of them, Sam?
Well, they're obviously brilliantly trained, beautifully bred, very well ridden. They seem to have every base covered at the moment. They've got horses that have got, plenty of speed, like Caribus. They've got horses that look as though they're going to stretch out and be equally comfortable over 10 furlongs. Native Trail, you would think. They've got French Derby Hope. they've also got plenty waiting in the wings that are just on the periphery in the Derby as well. One that I think you've backed anti-post and other strength depth as well. They've got older horses as well that are going to be 1.5 mile horses going forward. So they really have got, you know, a raft of ammunition to go with the summer. And it's great because we need strong competition. It's essential that Ballydoyle have somebody that's going to go up against them and compete vociferously in these top races. And, you know, racing does need a strong Godolphin without a shadow of a doubt. And it's great to see Charlie Appleby, you know, pretty phlegmatic, relaxed character who's done exceptionally well in recent years and has already established himself as probably one of the world's leading trainers. And William Buick seems to handle all that pressure, as does indeed James Doyle, you know, with great, just superb efficiency, really, and just the way that he rides, very undemonstrative fella, and just seems to be able to absorb pressure, as indeed does James Doyle, as we saw in the Guineas. So they've got everything in place for a very fruitful period of time, I think.
Yeah, all parts of that Godolphin machine, certainly the Charlie Appleby Godolphin machine, all seem to be working very smoothly. With regards to Native Trail, having finished second at Newmarket and then winning at the Curragh, I get the feeling that people don't quite put him on the same bracket as Caribus. But me personally, I think you touched on it, he might be a 10 furlong horse to me. So I think pretty well to win the race that he already has done. What did you think of that performance? Did it encourage you that maybe 10 furlongs might be within his grasp?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at his speed figures from last year to this year, he's not really improved this year. I think one or two have probably caught him up because he was such a great big beast of a thing as a 2-year-old that, you know, and with that great big grinding action that he got, that sometimes took a little bit of time just to engage in top gear. But once it did, there was no competing with him. I thought he did pretty well at the Curragh on Saturday. He was drawn in 1. That was a horrible draw, really, for a horse that's a long striding individual who's going to take a bit of time to engage top gear. And yet he managed to do that really well, I thought. And, you know, extricated himself from a pocket. That could have been a horror show, that really could, on Saturday afternoon. But thankfully, William Buick managed to have enough horse underneath him to navigate a clear passage through. And the way that he's picked up and gone to the line, just that raking stride is very, very difficult for other horses to come and overcome. And I wonder whether if him and Caribus had raced in a straight line, there might have been a different outcome to the Guineas. Who knows? We'll never know. They both came from opposite parts of the track. But
I felt that. I didn't think Caribus was that superior to him.
No.
The way the race panned out and the split with the horses that finished in the first 4 and where Caribus raced and Native Trail race.
Yeah, and then Caribus is a different type of model, really, isn't he? A different animal. He's got that push-button speed. He travels very strongly through his races. He's almost got that instant acceleration, whereas Native Trail takes 2 or 3 strides and then he engages top gear. I also don't think he'd mind a bit of cutting the ground either, Native Trail, the way that he hits the ground. I think Ascot could be absolutely perfect for him. It might be pretty good for Caribus as well, but I think Native Trail, at a track where they go, you know, nice straight mile, good gallop, and they come back to you a little bit there, I think that would be absolutely ideal. So, I mean, the St James's Palace looks like being a phenomenal race if they both go there.
All right. If I had to ask you to put your opinion to one of the 3 as to who's the best, Modern Games, Breeders' Cup Mark Turf, Juvenile Turf Mark, and French 2000 Guineas winner, Caribus, the 2000 Guineas winner at Newmarket, and Native Trail. If they all met, let's say they all met in the St James's Palace Stakes. Let's just say it's unlikely, but if they did, who would you be with?
Probably just Native Trail on that track. I'm not saying he's the best miler. You know, I think further down the line, you know, I wouldn't like to see him in a Sussex Stakes particularly. I don't think that would be his bag at all. Coming downhill and, you know, and on a undulating Camberfield track like that, I just wouldn't fancy him that much there. But I think at Ascot, nice straight mile with a bit of cover and a long wind up to the line, I think that'd be perfect for him.
I must ask you about the Irish 1000 Guineas winner, Homeless Songs, who visually was mightily impressive. Can you put a little bit of meat on the time figure bones?
Well, the time figure was superb. Hers was the best sectional from 3 out as well, as you'd imagine, with the way that she showed that, you know, blistering change of gear. You would think that. You know, obviously she's put away the 2 Ballydoyle fillies in real style. She's a little bit fragile. I think that's the reason probably we didn't see her at Newmarket and the reason that she didn't go to Longchamp as well. She's obviously taken a little bit of time to come right. And that's a bit of an issue if you are going to bet her anti-post for something like the Coronation, or if you're going to bet her to win perhaps even a Sussex Stakes where she takes on the boys and the older horses. So I'd want to see her in the stalls really before I had a play with her. But I was really, really taken with the performance. She couldn't fail to be. I mean, she was trapped out wide a little bit, but that didn't seem to matter. She's very professional, great attitude to racing, and that turn of foot, that distinguishes the brilliant horses from the very good ones, doesn't it? It's that ability to change gear, and I'm sure you were absolutely blown away by her as well, weren't you?
Visually, it was superb. I mean, there's a real joy in watching horses travelling well. I'm a sucker for any horse that travels up on the bridle and then has that turn of foot. They win me over nearly all the time. Archibald, the one exception. There was quite a lot of chat on social media about her after the race. If she were to take on the boys, quite a lot of people thought that she would be. They would favour her against the likes of Native Trail, Caribus, and Modern Games. What are your thoughts if she were to ever encounter them?
Well, looking at the speed figures that I keep that she's recorded compared to those, she's on a par with them. She's not far behind, and by Caribus, she's probably got the best acceleration, hasn't she, of the 3-year-olds that we've seen. Interesting to read the comments afterwards that Dermot Weld was worried whether that acceleration would last out over the mile, and quite a stiff mile at the Curragh as well. So, she's going to be an even better horse when it's more of a speed test, perhaps. And that's pretty scary for everything around, to be honest. I was taken with the third home. I thought Concert Hall ran really well in the wake of, that absolute speed ball, which is Home the Songs. I thought she came home really strongly, dropping back to the mile after winning over a mile and a quarter. I think Adam won the Oaks 9 years ago. She's obviously impeccably bred, and I think the mile and a half at Epsom will really suit her. I'd be disappointed if she didn't run a massive race come the Friday of the Derby meeting.
Well, do you think it's not unusual for Aidan O'Brien to run horses in either the Irish 2,000 guineas or 1,000 guineas and then send them on to Epsom? Is there anything in the 1,000 guineas in particular that you thought might be a play for the Oaks?
Well, yeah, I mean, Concert Hall would be my absolute pick out of there. I mean, Tuesday, I think she's run to a similar level a couple of times, and she could obviously improve and progress for stepping up in trip. And, and I think the draw plays a massive part as well at Epsom. We'll probably talk about the Derby a bit later on, but it's very difficult to be dogmatic about an anti-post bet till you've seen the draw. If you've drawn in that one box, traditionally that's a really difficult barrier to overcome in more ways than one. So I would want to see the draw first before I got involved. But I just like the way that Concert Hall finished off a race. Having the ability in the class to run well in a classic over a mile with the breeding that she has. And I love horses that have won at Navan as well, staying horses. If you win at Navan, either over jumps, fences, or on the flat, you've really got to want to win there. It's a really stiff track. It takes some getting. And the fact that she won over a mile and a quarter there, that suggests that a mile and a half, she'll get that standing on the head at Epsom. So she'd be the one that I'd like the most out of the race going forward over staying trips.
The last thing I'm going to talk about in this segment, and its relation to Homeless Songs, is the fact that Dermot Weld, who's been around for a very long time, another classic winner for him. Well done to Chris Hayes, of course, was on board. But the thing I'm enjoying about this season on the flat, yes, we are getting some breakthrough names. George Bowie winning his first classic with Cachet, and there are a lot of young, talented trainers. You look around, there are a lot of young trainers coming through, even the likes of James Horton, Tom Clover, etc. But a couple, James Ferguson, a couple members of the old guard are saying, hang on a second, we're not going to just go away just yet. Obviously, Dermot Weld, Sir Michael Stout with Desert Crown, and it's making for a really interesting season as far as I'm concerned on the flat.
Absolutely, yeah. Rock on the old boys. I mean, we're all for that, aren't we? But you're right. It's great to see some of
me, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's me and you, really, isn't it? You're the young, impetuous youth. I'm the wizened old cynic. But it is great to see. I mean, nobody loves a comeback more than me, and Sir Michael having a prominent runner in the Derby is just great news for racing, I think, and brilliant narrative, I think, going forward as well, and all power to him for that. And you've got Charlie Appleby, who sits somewhere in the middle as well. So I think it's very interesting as well to see how these young guys are emerging. I mean, George Bowie's sort of meteoric rise has just been absolutely astonishing, really, in the last 2 or 3 years. To go to a classic winning trainer from where he started from. Now he's had very good opportunities in life, and that's fine. But he's done his dues as well, assistant to Hugo Palmer. But to like turn the game inside out and achieve the success that he's had in such a short space of time is nothing short of astonishing, really.
Well, lots of positive chat in our racing recap. We're going to turn our attention now to maybe less positive thoughts in this week's Talking Topics. And there's been plenty of discussion in the last few weeks during the flat season, and of course the mixture of the flat season and the summer jumping, about crowd figures, the price of going racing. Sam, we talked a lot during the build-up to the Cheltenham Festival about field sizes. It now seems that racing attendances are going the same way as field sizes. They're dwindling. Prices are going up. The crowds are going down. What's your view on what's happening? Is this just inevitable? And is it?
Well, I think I wouldn't be the Racing Post biggest fan, but in their defence, they're doing a decent series at the moment, aren't they? Where they're trying to highlight what racecourses cost to get into, what the value is when you're there, etc., etc. Now, I was at Ludlow on Monday afternoon, and it was £23 to get in there. Now, I would be one of Ludlow's biggest supporters. Their prize money is terrific. Their sort of racecourse experience is very good, I think. But 23 quid for a Monday afternoon was a little bit toppy for me. And it was 11 for the cheaper part of the course, which is fine. There's still a good crowd there. So people either pay with their, they pay with their feet, don't they, basically? They either come or they don't come. The one good thing I'd say about Ludlow, it was 4 quid a pint. It was local, not that I sampled any of the local brewery that was on offer, Ludlow Brewery, but it was 4 quid a pint. I think it was 4 quid for a port roll. Those are workable figures, I think, compared to some of the figures and some of the food that I've seen on offer, either on Twitter or across social media, where it's 7 quid a pint, it's £9 for a sausage and chips, which looks absolutely wretched. We've got to be very, very careful, haven't we, that we don't price racing out of people's remit, to be honest, and people don't just choose to spend their leisure pounds somewhere else. I mean, if Wolverhampton have their way, I'm told they want to shut the course and race behind closed doors Monday to Friday. I mean, we're supposed to be an all-encompassing sport that try and interact with, new racing fans, and they're on about shutting the course basically for anybody who wants to go and racing behind closed doors, taking us back to the COVID era. I find that absolutely extraordinary that they wouldn't want people in the track. And of course, it's just financing. They don't want to finance it basically. But I just find that absolutely astounding that racing is perhaps going to go through with that and agree to it.
There are so many elements that are going on across the board that you wonder, are people really thinking about this? Because we're trying to get as many people to the racecourse, but unfortunately people are, whatever reason, they're having to encounter all these challenges, whether it's how you dress and you go to the races, whether you go to the racecourse and you can't use cash, and the idea of only paying contactless payments, etc. I mean, there ought to be some sort of study to say, what's putting you off going racing? Because I don't think people are, or the people making the decisions to do this, are fully aware of the challenges they're asking the racegoers to overcome just to come and have a day out at the races.
It's extraordinary, Rishi, isn't it? I mean, they're almost putting up every obstruction that you could possibly think of, really. And then we haven't even factored in small fields and bad value for money there. I see on social media that at York yesterday, all the bookmakers are betting first 4 places are 50 odds. That's a disgrace, absolute disgrace. Don't offer the enhanced place part of it, but at least offer a quarter of the odds first 4, and don't rip your customers off. I mean, that's astonishing, really, for me. So we're doing everything we can to shoot ourselves in the foot at a time when we should really be proactive and trying to take on board as many people as we can.
Well, let's hope that the highlight for many people of the flat season, the Derby and the Oaks at Epsom, brings slightly more positive news, and we get big crowds on the Friday and Saturday. Obviously, it's a very big weekend for the nation, and Epsom playing its part there. Just before we wrap this bit up, have you made a short list? Is there a list yet for you? Turn a list for the Epsom Classics.
Do you know what? Most years I've got quite strong views. I don't fancy the favourite. I think that's rubbish. I think that all the main contenders in the Derby have recorded really good speed figures. Even the Chester winners of Aidan O'Brien's, whether it be Desert Crown, whether it be Stone Age. The only one that hadn't really done anything on the figures was Luxembourg, and the bloody thing's not going to run, so I can't take him on. So at the moment, it's very frustrating, and I think there's some really good horses at massive prices. You know, the likes of Westover, who could improve from nowhere, the likes of United Nations, who I think's been a bit underrated. And I certainly think that there's been one or two of them that are really, really being sort of dismissed out of hand because they seem to be Aidan O'Brien's second strings, and I still think they're very useful horses. I think Star of India is a lovely, lovely horse, and the figure that he did at Chester suggests that. So it's not as if these horses have been winning the trials and winning them in a crawl and putting a poor figure up. They've all been doing, really, really good figures that would at least entitle them to be placed in any other Derby that I've got recorded in the previous 10 years. So as we touched on earlier, I think the draw will be a massive factor. Ground will be another factor as well. And the horse in a stable's form going into the race as well. We've still got a week or 10 days before the race, so I think all those sort of things will be factored in really. But yeah, I think the front of the market is right probably. Desert Crown to do what he did in Adante, just second time up. I thought that was an astonishing performance. He wasn't a horse that I particularly wanted to be with at York, and yet he routed what I thought was a fairly competitive field and did it in great fashion, and I should imagine that you're all over him, are you?
Yeah, well, I had a very, very small bet on him. I say very small, but very small bet on him a while back, mainly because I did one of those predictions for 2022, and I put him up as my horse to follow for 2022, and I thought if I did for the Derby and then waited till he reappeared in the Dante, then I would look like an idiot. That. But I also I like one other horse who really impressed me earlier in the year, and then early in the flat season. So I'm looking forward to chatting next week when we will know for certain whether that horse has got a supplementary entry.
Oh, a little tease there, Rish. Little tease.
I think we can all work out that it's Nation's Pride.
Nation's Pride.
Nation's Pride. Hopefully, when we next chat, Sam, we'll be able to do so, safe in the knowledge that he is in the Derby field and William Buick is riding. That's two of the three things I need to get that bet home. The other one, of course, is him to get the Derby win itself. And of course, we will be talking about the Oaks. So,
what about the Oaks, Rish? What about the Oaks? Have you got anything in there for us?
Yeah, so in the Oaks, I own 1/40th share in Rogue Millennium, who won the Lingfield Oaks trial. But I think it's a very good Oaks, and I think John Gosden probably is going to win it. But right. which horse, I don't know. I don't think there's that much between the two of them. I think Nashua is she's pretty good as well.
Yeah. Well, one's evens, one's 5-1, Rish.
Yeah, I know. I'm not convinced about where I'm going to end up putting my money on in the Oaks, but it's still to be discussed. You?
Well, you're going for the unsupplemented horses, aren't you, at the moment? And of course, you own sort of 1/40th of Rogue Millennium, so you'll be peeling off a few 50s, will you, and chucking them at your trainer and saying, "Come on, get this little filly of ours entered up, Tom."
It's already done.
Already done, is it?
It's already done, yeah. It's already done. She's going to, yeah.
Rather, unglamorously, was it bank transfer? Was it? From the Cayman account, was it, Rish? Cayman account?
We're not on a race course, so cash is fine.
Very good, very good. I think with the Moonlight's a player in that as well. She's a filly that I like a lot, and she put up a really, really smart figure at Newmarket. So there's some real quality going to be running at Epsom, I think, over that weekend.
Yeah, every time I look at the Racing Post, or I look on social media and I hear another contender's been confirmed for the race. Art sinks a tiny little, but she's at my outfit, Rogue Millennium. She's unbeaten, so you don't know where she's going to end up. Sam, that is it for this week's episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. Thank you for joining me this week. I'm looking forward to chatting chatting to you next week when we will have crystallized our thoughts for the Epsom Classics. We will also be chatting to Tony Elliott, who runs the Rogues Gallery Racing Syndicate. Not only do they have Rogue Millennium running in the Oaks, but they have a lot of good horses dotted about, one or two maybe to follow, one comeback story for one horse in particular that I think would be quite interesting to a lot of our listeners. Obviously, more chat about Epsom. And of course, we will be here every Monday through the flat season, giving you as many angles on the sport as we can. If you like what you've heard or watched in this or any of our episodes, then please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, hopefully a positive review, or in the comments section on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us. Racing Weekly is back, and we look forward to chatting to you next week.